Guessing a bunch of folks. I see a lot of Golden Packet folks on here, but it looks like there's quite a few more on as well. This may actually be, I don't know, Lynn. I'm gonna say this may actually be the best turnout we've had for a call.
I think so because I don't remember having to scroll a list before.
Yeah, so this is great.
Now you're making me nervous here.
Yep.
No,
No,
no pressure.
it's a good topic.
No, it's a great topic, and yeah, great cause, great group of people. So with that said, and the fact we're already 3 minutes into it, just for just housekeeping purposes, the meeting is being recorded, and I will have it posted to YouTube. Hopefully uh, by the end of the week, maybe a little bit before then. Actually, you guys should be able to see me here momentarily. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jeff Hochberg, W4JEW. I've been running the Appalachian Trail Golden Packet group for, gosh, going on 6 years now, I think, something like that. For those that are not, I didn't really cover it in the slides, but for anyone who's joining us today and is not aware of what the Golden Packet is, so Bob Bruniga, WB4APR, the man himself, conjured up this idea of having an event that's held once a year where we have stations all along the length of the Appalachian Trail from Georgia to Maine and using APRS to exchange messages in real time. And of course, without the need for really any infrastructure whatsoever. I think 2018, 2019, somewhere, it was like probably 2019, I think it was my first year. And I was just absolutely blown away by it. How cool of an event it is. It's a great reason to get out in the field. A great reason to learn remote operations, learn APRS if you're not already knowledgeable in it. This group just over the years has brought together, I think, some of the best of the best in the world of APRS. So I really can't think of any other place to go to learn APRS other than the Golden Packet group. It's just an amazing group. If you are interested, you can go to at goldenpacket.net, and there's a link to sign up to our group on groups.io. I did have some plans to discuss the APRS Foundation, but I know some of you already know I was in a pretty serious car accident a couple of weeks ago and spent several days in the hospital, had surgery, totally just kind of turned things upside down. So I have not really been in normal operations mode. So I'll provide a foundation update during the February knowledge share. I guess, just to talk a little bit about, so this going into, of course, Happy New Year to everyone, 2024. So we do just use the abbreviation ATGP for the Appalachian Trail Golden Packet. So this year is ATGP 24. It will be on the third Saturday of July, as it always is. So that brings us to July 20th. I think the last meeting that we had, our last knowledge share, it was like something like 223 days out. We're down to 193 days. That counter will keep decrementing, and it'll seem like it's getting faster and faster the closer that we get to July 20th. And my hairline will go up a little bit further by then. A lot's going to happen starting towards the end of this month, beginning of February. In terms of the overall planning, we typically will start out by putting up the sign-up sheet. That will be available on the at goldenpacket.net website. Of course, we'll send out notification when the sign-up sheet is listed. I don't necessarily want to put the cart before the horse, so to speak, in that we did make some changes this past year in that we added a couple of sites. We also changed one of the sites that we'd historically used in the past. And I think as a group, we all need to come to an agreement that the sites that we used last year will be what we go with this year, or if we're open to making any sorts of adds, moves, or changes for this year's event. So I think that probably needs to be done before we put out a sign-up sheet. You know, probably my biggest focus of this year is getting more people out at each site. I'm a big fan of redundancy, resiliency, and we had a number of sites where we only have one individual, and if something happens to that person, we come really, really close in a number of cases to having to call off the event or at least call off sections of the event, which, in my opinion, there's not really much point in having the event if we can't have all of the sites. So we've been giving a lot of thought as to ways that we can increase the number of people at each site. Thought about introducing a concept of having like a site captain, maybe even identifying ham radio clubs that are in the vicinity of each site, where maybe a club is willing to sponsor a site, and some of the club members be the ones to actually go out and activate the location. This is, by the way, you know, this is a two-way street too. So, you know, and I'm really just kind of going through this really quickly, but when we have our upcoming calls, I mean, this is not like a unilateral decision. This is a group thing and just kind of regurgitating what we've done in the past. But if you guys have ideas, I mean, don't be afraid to say, hey, Jeff, stop. You know, what about doing this? Because I love when others come up with ideas. I don't mind being told, you know, whatever you're thinking is crazy. It's not going to happen. You know, by all means, share. Open-minded. I'm an open-minded person. The past 2 years, so you know, Kenwood, thankfully they're coming out with a new APRS radio later on this month, I think, and then going into February. So the D75 will be coming out, but historically we've all depended very heavily on the Kenwood D710 and the D700, its predecessor. As of right now, Kenwood is still not making a mobile APRS radio. So a couple of years ago, we introduced what we call the APRS appliance, or the Appalachian Trail Golden Packet appliance. You know, it's worked moderately well to very well, and depending on who's operating it and where it was. However, we did get some feedback in terms of add smooth changes. So the question is do we use the same thing, or do we potentially open up the event to using something else? And I think that based on what John Tarbox and I discussed, I think probably one of the best ways of accomplishing this is to get a committee together that is run by 2 to 3 people who have no vested interest in one way or the other as to which product or solution that we go with. It doesn't necessarily need to be off-the-shelf solution. But you know, somebody that can take what our requirements are and run with them and determine what's out there and what is going to be the best fit for our requirements, and then come back to the group and you know, get buy-in to see if that's what we want to use this year.
So, question on that point.
Yes.
We've traditionally done 1200 baud with 9600 then as a test. There was talk this year of maybe doing only 9600 baud. What are the thoughts on that issue?
Personally, if it were just me, I would say we would just do 9600. But again, you know, it's not my decision solely. So, you know, Lynn, John, either John or any of the regulars, you know, feel free to share ideas. We don't necessarily need to make a decision, but we could just forgo 1200.
Well, this past year, we did have one site that did not have 9600 baud capability.
Yeah.
So we have to balance that out once we get the list of the equipment that people are able to bring to the field.
Yeah. So that was another thing too. So one of the things that I kind of dropped the ball on this past year that I did do the year before, it worked out very nicely, was I went through and made sure that everybody provided an inventory of what they were bringing out. And we had a couple of surprises this past year where we just had no idea of some of the equipment that people were bringing out there, and, you know, didn't find out until basically the day of that site was not going to be 9600 capable. If we can guarantee that everybody is going to be capable of running at 9600, sure. But if we can't, then yeah, that's obviously is going to be a problem. but inventory is back on my list for this year for sure. I learned my lesson. Yeah, so we tend to over the years, like I try and do as much as I can in Google Docs, and I also try and make things as templated as possible or boilerplate as much as content as possible, so that every year I'm not having to like reinvent the wheel. So a lot of that work is already done. In fact, I would say probably like 90 to 95% of it is already done, to the point where I feel as though if I had like 2 to 3 people who and I'll more clearly like list out what the things are that need help with. I promise they're not big lifts by any means. It's just nice to have the assistance. It's also nice to just have another set of eyes on things. But I'll make some more formal requests over the next few weeks of areas where I could use some help. Preparedness, again, just a huge fan of that. The site equipment inventories. We're huge proponents of testing, test, and then test again. We even went so far as to build configuration guides. I built a YouTube video step-by-step on how to configure the D710 specifically for the event. I got a lot of really good feedback on that YouTube video. I think just insofar as the month leading up to the event, it's been pretty safe to assume that at this point, we do have these monthly knowledge share calls, but I'm just going to earmark right now that the May and June calls right off the bat are going to become ATGP 24 planning calls. They may be more of these like open house or help desk calls. They maybe have a little bit more structure to them. But there will be a requirement for attendance, and this is where the whole captain and team approach comes in. Is not every person from every team needs to be on every call, but we would expect at least one person from each team to be on the call, and they're responsible for going back and making sure that everyone else in the cohort has is up to speed on it. Otherwise, that puts all the onus on whoever's running the event to be responsible for keeping on top of 16 different teams, and that's just not realistic. So as of right now, that doesn't mean I'm not coming to the May, June meetings. Please plan on coming to them. In fact, that means they're more important than if they were just knowledge share calls than anything else. And other than that, again, totally open to ideas. If you guys say, screw it, we don't even want to mess around with 1200 this year, as long as we can make sure that everybody has what they need to do 9600 out of the gate. Heck, that makes things a lot easier, and that we don't have to even worry about whether or not people are switching. They're just ready to go with 9600 out of the gate. And, that's one less thing to worry about as far as I'm concerned. Lynn, do you have anything in particular you want to cover based on what I went over, or anything else?
No, I think you covered it really well for where we're at this time of year.
Yeah, so this is really, this is the point at which I'm kind of like thinking about kicking things into high gear, and February, beginning of February is usually when things really do kick into high gear. So a lot more to come. I'm super excited about this year's event. I am about every year, but this year I feel like there were some really important lessons learned the past 2 years in particular that I feel like if we can put more emphasis on getting more people out at each location, and that we spend more time on just the planning, the testing, the inventory aspects of it, and team communication, we're going to have an amazing event this year. And then who knows, maybe we can start thinking about a Pacific Coast Trail Summit or a Golden Packet following year. It's only like 3 times the size. That's it.
Yeah, something like that, but at least the peaks are higher over there.
Yes.
Can
So,
I throw something out, Jeff?
please, yeah.
Well, you know that the Golden Packet was started by Bob Berhinga from the Naval Academy. And since Bob has been gone, we've really had no Naval Academy input. And I see we have Colonel Hamilton from the Army here tonight, and the Army's supporting us. And one of the things we talked about is maybe getting different clubs to support different places on the trail. So I throw that out. Maybe Colonel Hamilton would like to have some of his cadets out of one of the mountains. And also perhaps he'd know the contact person at the Naval Academy, so we could issue a challenge to the Naval Academy that they might like to participate as well. And that's my thought for the night.
Yeah, that's a great way. Dr. Hamilton, forgive me. Is it more appropriate to address you as Dr. Hamilton or Colonel Hamilton?
Stephen works.
Stephen works fine. Okay, I'm sorry.
So no, that's a great point. I will tell you the biggest challenge in the summer at any of the academies is the cadets go to the Four Winds. Like they're just not here. It's incredibly challenging. Their summer schedule is really, really like highly curated and planned. So trying to get that done is not impossible. I had one cadet a few years ago, locally here. We did this Hudson Valley River Relay, and I had one cadet actually show up to that, but it was literally on his own leave time. It wasn't as a formal event. So yeah. So that's one thing. The second problem is there's a Service Academy radio group at SARG, which they've been doing in net now for about the last like half year. And basically the Air Force Academy and the Naval Academy just doesn't have an active ham club, unfortunately. The good thing that I'm super fortunate in is that we not only have a club, but we test internally. We can do tests for cadets on campus, and we have I wouldn't say we have a strong club, but it was way stronger than it was when I was a cadet. We have a pretty decent club, and we've licensed like a lot of people. So we've done pretty good. We're the most active of all the service academies right now. Air Force is in the process of recreating their club. They kind of went by the wayside when they got involved with a bunch of satellite operation, which is fine, but it just got to the point where they kind of separated from ham radio, mainly because their satellites were going into different frequencies that were like Air Force frequencies, not ham frequencies. We have a full up 442 2-meter system here. Not used that much, except for when I talked to my classmate, Drew Morgan, when he was up on the ISS, and we were able to do a contact directly from West Point with the ISS, and have all the cadets ask questions and stuff. And there's a Facebook somewhere out there. If you Google, you might be able to find the Facebook of that. So we have I wouldn't say it's robust, and it's not just because of my fault. The cadets are actually good. It's a little bit of my fault, maybe. It's just because I can't devote as much time as I would love to it, but we have a pretty good ham club. It's not impossible for me to get potentially a cadet to come out to do it, but it's going to be a little bit problematic, mainly because their schedules are just, like I said, they're highly curated, they're highly planned at the beginning of the year. So, or at the really about this time is when we start looking at our summer things. So yeah, if there's a cadet that's local or somebody who's really excited about it, they'll figure their own way to get here. But it's hard to. It may be difficult to get participation that way. But I would say I participated last year, which was the first time I ever done it. It was just super cool. I was honored to be asked to do this. A little bit last minute, but Steve Bossard contacted me and asked me to do it. I thought it was just like super cool. So it's not to say that there wouldn't be maybe some faculty that could potentially get cadets to go to it, but yeah. It is it's just time, and it's just a challenge.
But it's great idea. All right. Well, I guess we're already about like 22 minutes in. So, and I know Stephen, I know you had quite a bit prepared. So I just kind of had an introductory slide. I stole your title information from your signature. So I probably allow you to give you could probably do a better job introducing yourself than I can. I'll embarrass myself, but this is definitely a presentation that I've been waiting for, impatiently at best. So, Stephen, I'm gonna hand it over to you. I'll stop sharing and let you take controls.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Thanks, Jeff. And I do want to say I'm just really your accident was kind of I mean, it's rough to hear. I'm just really glad that you're on the mends, and that was those car accident scenes look pretty rough. So just glad to hear that you're on the road to recovery there.
Thank you.
I'm going to first of all say that, again, I'm a computer scientist, and I'm probably going to dork up this for a second just because I'm used to doing Teams. What is the best way to share PowerPoint? Should I share my screen and do the PowerPoint?
Yeah, probably best is just to do the screen. And then so you click the share button down at the bottom, and then you'll get another box that'll pop up on the upper left-hand corner of that box. It should give you the option to share the full screen. Yep.
Okay. We'll see what I can do. Oh, this doesn't look too bad. I might be able to do that.
Yeah, so you see the window with Zoom and whatnot in it. And then, yeah, you just bring PowerPoint into that window and you'll be good to go.
Okay, we'll see. This is definitely different in Teams. Oh, you can see my whole screen now?
Yep, you see all of
like a full screen. Let's see. Okay, yep. Everybody can see that then?
It looks great.
Okay, perfect. Well, first of all, thanks for having me do this. This is if I had a couple of weeks, I would love to really curate this presentation a little bit better. But I really was kind of putting together some different thoughts in my head of what we've been doing here at West Point. Just a little bit of background on me. I was on the faculty at the Electrical Engineering Computer Science in 2008 to 2011. And during that time is when Diana Laux, a great friend of mine, she's in the physics department, she's an academy professor now here too. She contacted me and said, hey, I know you're a ham operator. Can we figure out how to do this Balloonsat thing? And just a quick backstory, I was in Iraq in 2004 in changing command from, I was in 57 Signal Battalion Alpha Company, and then we were changing over to, I can't remember what unit she was in, but she was coming from Bragg, and she was the commander that I was transferring all of our, basically all our responsibilities to when we were coming back in 2005. So I knew her from deployment experience, and then she calls me up at West Point in 2009 saying, hey, there's this Balloonsat project. We've done this before, but we need to do some APRS. And I was like, oh, well, I've done some packet before. We could probably figure out the APRS. And so I've been involved with packet since I was in high school in the late 80s when I lived in Texas. And I think anybody who's moved around a little bit could realize that Texas, yeah, I could go 40 miles on, just a dipole. In New York, I can't go near as far as that just because of terrain. So it's always been kind of a weird fascination for me of just understanding how far packet can go and the relays and specifically in these more mountainous regions, like how this works. So in any case, that's how I got kind of started with this. I was in charge of the ham club back then. We were just trying to get our HF radios and all that stuff set up. We have a fantastic system now. We had some donors come up on the net, and we have Flex 6700 to 6600, an ICOM. I'm probably not going to get that one right. It's a little bit of an older ICOM radio. When I was a cadet, we had the IC4KL, I think, the 1500 watt linear amp, but we have now the linear amp for the Flex radio, which the Power Genius, I think, is what it's called. So we're in really good shape as far as equipment. So in any case, I wanted to first talk about Balloonsat, and then I'm going to talk about land navigation. And I will say, I'm going to caveat that I was not a part of the land navigation directly. I was like an indirect advisor to it. So I may have some there. If there's questions on the slides or whatever afterward, like I can get the people to help answer it. I may not be the best person to actually answer some of those questions, but for me, I think it's important for the community, the ham community, to understand what we went through at West Point. So that's to me, this is like part of this presentation. I think it's a fascinating thing that kind of what happened, just with a bunch of smart individuals trying to figure out like how to make things work. So with the Balloonsat, of all the things I've ever dealt with West Point, being, as a cadet, I was just trying to survive and graduate. When I came back, it was really cool to work with some of the cadets and figure these things out. But just being able to send a balloon up to edge of space and recover it, which we've been, I can't give you a percentage. I can tell you we lost one. One Balloonsat, I think it was about 2014-ish, 2014 or 2015, I think we lost one. And mainly because it was overweighted and it ended up landing in the Long Island Sound. So we never recovered that. But the highest recorded altitude by data is what you're seeing there, 103. We actually probably had one go 107 or 109. We just didn't. We weren't recording data as well back in the earlier time of when we started it. But in general, around 100,000 feet is when these things generally pop, and then you have to recover it after that. This bottom left is probably my favorite one, because it took 2 balloon launches to really understand how to capture Wi-Fi. But 32,000 feet, we were able to capture Wi-Fi access point. And that's actually particularly interesting now from the military, because we're looking at high altitude balloons, and obviously nowadays, this was done before, I have to caveat this, was done before the Chinese balloon that was widely known in the news. And if anybody has a clearance, we could talk in a different location and discuss some of what they did. But I would say in general, it's a little bit amateur hour, but they did some cool stuff. But yeah, we put up a Raspberry Pi on this thing, and we wanted to see, the question was, how high could you be and still collect Wi-Fi? And one of the things that really was interesting is I was the one that was most optimistic, saying 10,000 feet. So the fact we got 32 was beyond anybody's prediction. That's pretty high. I mean, you are not seeing the balloon over 10,000 feet. So basically, that's a silent sniffer, somewhat hanging out there. So basically, it was just a Raspberry Pi that was just looking at Wi-Fi and just recording it, and then recording the GPS data. So that was a fun one. We did have a Yagi antenna that was probably about a foot or so with a bunch of elements. So it was optimized, pointing straight down, and it did break when it landed. So that was another physics problem on implementation. So in any case, we did the Geiger counter. I'm not a physicist, so I don't. These are counts per minute. So we had the Geiger counter counting radiation. Obviously, radiation goes up high. I will say it's not in my slides, but one of the things that one of the cats was interested in was I brew beer as like a side hobby that I've been doing for years. So one of the things we did do is put a packet of beer yeast on one of these, and then we kept one on the ground and actually brewed a 10-gallon batch and split one with the radiated yeast and one without it. And the reasoning behind this is that yeast replicates every 4 hours. So if you can potentially alter it through radiation, then you should be able to notice a difference. I will tell you that taste-wise, nobody could notice a difference on that. I did it a couple of different times. I did do it with liquid yeast, and because I felt like that would have more of an ability to I don't know, mutate at some level. and just got nothing on that. So I don't know. If we ever do this again, I wouldn't be too interested in doing it unless they get something where it's going to get radiated a little bit more. But again, I don't know. Maybe my palete's not as sophisticated as others. So, all right. So let me see if I can go to the next one. Okay. So let's go through some pictures. So this is what we eventually ended up on the design was these boxes that you normally get, like, I don't know, your Omaha steaks or something. Like you get these like insulated boxes. They're perfect. They're absolutely perfect for mounting, because you can drill holes in them, you can tape them, you can do all these things. The one thing I will say the cadets always fail to realize is that tape weighs something, you know, so they'll figure out all their measurements, and then they tape the whole thing up and drill holes and add little components and things, and then all of a sudden the whole thing weighs a lot more, which is problematic. But the best thing that the first one we didn't get so well, but when you get a picture like this and you pull it off, it's the one of the most gratifying things. It probably is what inspired me to continue on trying to figure out this project. And again, these are all beaconing APRS. Here's another cool image here of the goal at one point. I don't know what the goal is when it comes to pictures, other than capturing the imagination. Obviously, that's a goal. That's just fascinating. The first one we sent up, it actually ran out of memory, because back when the memory cards were smaller, it actually only captured up to about 50,000 feet, and then we didn't get any more images. And everybody was so bummed that we launched another one a couple weeks later, just so that we can get some pictures, because the cadets really want to see the pictures. So this one here, I would like to say that it's the curvature of the Earth. I am not convinced it is. I'm not a flat earther or anything, but it's weird with these cameras because they just do weird things. Definitely the GoPros have a fisheye lens. They'll bend some things. I think this could be, if this is one that was done from the Raspberry Pi. I didn't actually get a chance to take a look. This is probably more accurate. I think this was probably done from a Raspberry Pi. But you definitely get these just stunning images. I don't know. I think that of all the data we capture, at the end of the day, people just want to see the pictures. So I'm just eye candying here for you, so you can see some of the pictures of what we have. And again, I have my the link was at the beginning there, fb.me/WP Balloonsat. That's been around for a while. So I think if I'm sharing my screen, I might be able to pull this off. I don't know. One of the things that I think is fascinating when it comes to getting our APRS stuff right is APRS.FI stores about 2 days, I think. There's some limit, so I always have to download the stuff. But once you download the KML, you get this view, and it's just beautiful. I mean, now we're in this case, you can see that the wind was incredibly. I think this is. Oh, that's the one that landed in Poughkeepsie. I didn't have the time. This is the one thing I would have liked to have done, is actually put which year this was. We generally do one a year. And last year we didn't have one that was successful. It got actually caught in a tree on the launch. It was a whole complete different failure. But again, it's not, I guess I got to say that this is all a complete hobby thing for cadets. There are potential cadets that are doing some kind of research and some kind of research project with it, but in general, this is all their own time. And so it's just their free time, and then they spend their weekend launching these and putting them in. I mean, the launch day and that whole day is going to be a long day, but building the payload and getting that all right it's really a lot of just. I hate to say donated time. It's probably the best way to say it. It's just hobby time. Like, they're just enthusiastic about doing the project. They're not getting a grade for it. So I say that importantly because there's huge mistakes they make, but it's super cool for them to not be attributional of like, oh, well, I'm going to get a bad grade on this. Sometimes they're a little slack maybe, but a lot of times they're learning. They're just learning engineering. They're learning a lot of different things. I always learn, my biggest thing for me is I'm usually a chase vehicle. And you could go on the web page, and KJ5HY-9 is my thing, but you'll find it on some of the things. You'll have some routes, and I've always been interested in trying to get the cadets to figure out how do you do a little bit of land nav, a little bit of prediction, and also a little bit of what would I call it? I don't even know. It's just navigation of a vehicle and trying to figure out what's the best route to get to where we think it's going to go to. And it's I think the chase is actually, to me, probably the most fun part about this whole project, just because there's so much that happens, you know, from when we think it's happening. We look at our predicted models. There's HabHub. There's a bunch of different models that we use to try to figure out where it's going to land. We generally have to drive. You can see West Point here on the bottom right. We generally drive way to the west, and then hope that it doesn't land in like the city or in the ocean. I mean, that's the goal. Is we want to be able to recover it. And so where this one landed is actually pretty close. We generally try to make them land near West Point, mainly because if it gets stuck, and I have some pictures here, if it gets stuck in a tree or something, it's just problematic. It's really hard to recover. So we want it nearby so that logistically we're able to go back and recover that. So that's that one. Here's one of my favorite ones. We saw, this is the only one of like the 10 or 12 that I've done that we saw this one coming down. We were probably a mile from where this housing area was, and we saw it coming down. And one of the cadets, I almost ran off the road actually, because I was so excited, which is super like dangerous. So I'm now rethink that, but we saw it like coming down, but the roads don't, when you see the parachute and everything coming down, the roads didn't they didn't connect correctly for us to get to where it was going. So we had to take a very roundabout route. But it landed literally right where you're seeing it. This was, again, my favorite one because it was so easy to recover. What normally happens is it lands in like a really tall tree or somebody's property, and it's just a complete, like, it can be very, very difficult. And here again, all of this data is coming from APRS.fi, and you can get the KMLs. So we have a lot of these. They're not, I just realized today when I went through our Facebook, they're not all on our Facebook. We have, all this data is actually stored on our Teams channel here at West Point. We've actually repopulated from years before. So we have a lot of good data here. It's absolutely fascinating. I threw this picture in because I feel like this is, in general, what happens to a balloon. It starts to go up, it gets carried by the jet stream, and then it gets up to the 70,000 foot range, and then it swirls. And you can see the swirl in this one. It just swirls up, and then it pops because the pressure goes down so low that the balloon gets huge. And I want to say somewhere on our Facebook there should be one video where we actually had an upward facing camera and we actually saw the balloon pop, and it's pretty impressive. Unfortunately, I don't have that video like ready for you now, but super cool to just see that actually happen. This is what happens. Like, if you look at our northeastern region here in New York, you're going to land either in the ocean or in a tree. And so the tree is what generally happens. We did get it was a couple, it was several years ago. We had one that landed in a very, very tall tree. I didn't know how we were going to recover it, but the West Point climbing team, we got them to come out, and then they actually were able to recover it after about like 4 weeks. Interestingly enough, we were using the Bionics tracker on that one. I can't remember which one it was. And the battery, whatever we put on that thing, it was transmitting for like 4 weeks. So I was really excited because for me, as part of the ham radio person in this project, the one thing I want to do is never lose this thing. Like if I lose it in the ocean because we can't get it, then that's a different problem. It's a physics problem. But if I lose it because the battery went out and we lost the APRS tracker, that to me would be like awful. Like that can't happen. So for a while, we were actually putting 2 APRS trackers on it so that we wouldn't lose it. Because if you're putting a Geiger counter, some of these components they put on are a little bit expensive. So you really want to try not to waste your guys' money. I hate to say it's taxpayer money, but it's not all of it is. Some of it's donations that we get for this, but we're trying to do the best we can. I found this picture today and it got really excited just because this was our first one. My son is in the bottom left there in the camouflage. He is now a junior at RIT studying electrical engineering. So that's how long ago that was. So 2011. This one was one of the most epic recoveries. The first one we did, we had no idea what we were doing with recovery because we just didn't know. And you can see our uniforms there are they're not OCP, those are ACUs. So that's clearly a little bit dated there. This was interesting because we had multiple problems on this one. And I look back at this as so much like that you learn. One of the biggest problem we had with this one was it landed somewhere in I want to say Pauling, New York. If anybody knows anything about the other side of the river here, they're just random people like, I don't know, I think Paul Simon lives somewhere over there. Martha Stewart has some. When you get on that other side, you get these random famous people who have their retreat homes and stuff there. And I say that because what happened was once we got to where we thought it was, my son there, the Aaron, and so my oldest son was actually taking this picture, but my younger son there, he was looking, he was just like, Daddy, why does a bird feeder have a camera on it? And again, 2011, and he's super observant. I was like, oh, that's weird. And then all of a sudden, we're standing at this one place where this property was. It was a little bit gated, and there was a birdhouse with a camera on it. There were like 3 vehicles that showed up, and they were just like, whoa, like, what is this? Like some kind of insurrection? What's going on? Why are these people in uniform here? Because we're all in uniform. And they were literally flipping out. And they're like, no, we are the private security for these homes. We have no idea who these people were. Like, we have no idea. But I'll tell you what was weird. Well, there were multiple things that happened. One was, once we explained what we were trying to do, they became more calm. They got the call. They called ahead or something, and they let one kid out of one of our officers. I think it was Diana that went to go try to find where they were going. The problem is we did some bad coordinate conversion. You know, all of you who are doing APRS, you probably know there's the degrees, minutes, seconds. There's degrees, minutes, decimal. There's degrees, decimal. Like you can do these different ways. We were so excited. There was so much thing that one of the cadets just misread it because it didn't make it into APRS.FI. We drove until we got one of our D700s or D710s, whatever we had at the time, to pick up the lat long, and the lat long was just when we converted it, we were wrong, and so he went out there. They both went out there. They couldn't find it, so then we left, and then I was like, well, let's just recalculate this again. We recalculated. It was wrong. I figured out the right place, and then they're like, oh, well, that's so-and-so's property. You're going to have to do this. You know, to talk to somebody. And you can see the time of night, like it's getting, dark out. So we ended up just kind of going out in the woods. It was not near anybody's property. It was way out in the woods. It was probably like a good 3/4 mile hike. And then, and then our cadets found it. They were super excited, being our first one. So anyway, I don't know. I just have a lot of good memories with this one because this was the first one that really got us kind of like excited that we could do it. Unfortunately, we went to a pizzeria right after this and realized that our memory card it was a bad engineering thing. We never actually updated it. I think it was Diana said, hey, do you have a memory card? We're going to test this out. So back then we actually had one of those old school digital cameras that didn't have an automatic thing. We had to have an automatic thing to basically press the button. So we had this or short the circuit for the button, whatever it was. And we were testing it, and I gave her like a 2 GB or whatever it was. I gave her like whatever I had, and I was just like, yeah, we'll test this out, but we'll eventually update it. And nobody thought to update it is what happened. So again, this project has always been one of my favorite things of like, you don't have an option once you let this thing fly. You know, everything you've done, you hope for the best, and you're going to have to figure it out from there. So, oh, wow, where are we at here? Okay, so I guess that's the end of the Balloonsat thing. Before I move to the land nav, I just wanted to see if there was, I know we have a lot of people on, I've been like jabbering on here. I want to know if there's any questions or thoughts or anything. Yeah, go ahead, Carlton.
Have you ever thought of incorporating like a radio direction finding in that recovery?
That is an interesting question. No, but it's not to say that we wouldn't do that. The main reason is, in general, the first one, like specifically the one that's on this one here that you're seeing on the screen, was an MT300. It was 300 milliwatts. The fact that we know it's transmitting, just it transmitting its GPS location, there's absolutely no need for direction finding. I'll tell you, just even getting its GPS position still makes this a hard problem. Like if you ever go out to find these things, it's a hard problem. Direction finding, yeah, no, I mean, I would be, I think, yeah, no, not for this particular scenario, just because we're generally trying to recover the equipment. We want like a perfect place for it to go. Direction finding is hard. I still say, is that Steve on there? Steve Boster here.
Yes, yeah, it is. And you can see that I'm grinning because, you know, we've been having a lot of back channel conversation about this use case. So we could probably do a separate presentation on RDF-ing HABs and National Weather Service satellites. That's, I mean, balloons, but.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is a difficult problem. And I challenge anyone to try to do this. In general, we are just so happy to recover the thing. Like I said, we've never actually not recovered one because of a radio failure. It's only because, I mean, radio fails when it goes into the Long Island Sound, I guess. But we've generally been able to recover it, so I haven't thought of doing that. That being said, I think a year or so ago, I think we did put a beacon on one just in case the battery failed, so that we could RDF it if we wanted to, but it wasn't necessary. That's still, to me, it's a hard problem.
I like that one from, what was it? Was it last year? The one that caught the tailwind and zoomed over Foxborough?
Yeah, so I think
go at it.
I think that might have been this one, if I were to guess. Yeah, because we're way past Poughkeepsie, so this one doesn't even solve the rest of the problem. This is just a Google Earth image of what we had going on, and it was that one sucked. It was very difficult. It was a 4-hour drive from where I'm at to go recover it. He was stuck in a tree, so we had to send somebody out later on to get it. We did recover it. That was problematic. I am remiss on this one. And Steve's on here, so he remembers. But we had Nolan Pierce. We had just like this genius cadet who was out now at Northeastern, about to graduate with his master's in electrical engineering. But he was very instrumental in trying to figure out how to do slow scan pictures and send those down. He did do it with a static picture. The one thing we never did get perfectly right was, how do you take a picture from the balloon where it's at and also do a slow scan transmission down? I think we have the tools to do it. I don't know if I have enough motivated cadets right now to do it. It's not to say it won't happen, but it's definitely something I'm interested in. But after doing a bunch of these, like, to me, I'm like, I want to know, like, what's the next best cool thing to do. It's super fun event, and if I get enough cadets to just want to do it, then we could send them up. But I'm really interested. Like the idea of like capturing Wi-Fi was super cool. That was supposed to have been a ShmooCon talk. I'm kind of bummed that we never actually wrote that up. But I mean, ShmooCon is this weekend. But Would have been fun, but yeah, this one in particular was bad just because of the winds. You have to always figure out where the wind is going to go, and it'll carry it. That's the problem. The good thing is it carried it north. You can see the ocean there on the bottom corner of the screen. So it still landed on land. We can always recover it if it lands on land. You're not recovering anything in the ocean. Like that's the one thing that I always tell the cadets, that's when you fail, is when it lands there, or potentially New York City. I think would be particularly bad, just because of the high-rise buildings. And it's not to say you couldn't recover it, but it's going to be a lot more challenging. We try to hopefully get in just kind of, I don't know, kind of dead areas, is what we kind of plan for. But you can't always get. There's physics, there's the wind, there's a lot of data. There are times when we've gotten within about 4 miles of where we thought we were going to land, but in many cases that just doesn't happen. So that's the reality of that. Okay, I have another question here. We'll go to Len.
Yeah, a couple of things. I follow a lot of the high altitude balloon groups with using APRS, and some of the things they run into is they have GPSs that shut down when they go above 60,000 feet.
Yes.
And that makes recovery rather tricky. And one of the other problems they tend to have a lot is if they don't have stability in the descent, their payload might be swinging around to the point that the GPS loses lock, and then APRS is useless until it actually gets on the ground. And if it's down in a little depression and there's no iGate service around, you can drive right by with your D700 and never pick up a packet. That's why a lot of them really do put on just a continuous beacon on RF, because you can just take a directional antenna. You don't even have to do fancy direction finding, just a directional antenna to let you know what direction to drive, and as long as the signal's getting stronger. So your next challenge, have you heard of a floater?
No.
A floater is you take a Mylar balloon envelope and an extremely light payload, and you calculate it all so that it goes up and floats at about 40 to 60,000 feet. And they have circumnavigated the globe, I believe the record's around 13 or 15 times in a single balloon.
Yeah.
And
no, I saw a presentation at HamSci about that, and that's a very different. So that's actually what I proposed this year, just because I want to do something different. Yeah, no, because the payloads that these guys are putting on are super, super heavy.
yeah, you can't do a heavy payload.
Yeah. No, I'm fascinated with that one. I think that would be very interesting, and I have one cadet who's interested in it and possibly doing some research on that. I'll tell you the GPS, the thing I solved. So I had that happen once. We lost it at like 70,000 feet, and then it came back in when it came down, and it was I could see it beaconing. Actually, oddly enough, you can go to APRS.FI, and it was beaconing bad GPS coordinates, but APRS.FI still recorded it as a raw in the raw packet section. So that was useful, so that we knew it wasn't actually dead. We thought maybe it froze, or the battery froze or something. This was like one of the first ones we did. But Bionics, their GPS 5 does go above 100,000 feet, or it goes to like 250,000 or something like that. It goes way above. So yeah, there's a reasoning behind it. It has something to do with like selling GPS. It has to do with like intercontinental ballistic missiles. There's a whole bunch of like weird reasons why this didn't work. It's not a mathematical reason. It's more of a government and like reason. But the GPS 5 that Bionics uses is the only thing that we put up. We don't even mess around with anything else, specifically because we don't want to lose our altitude on that. Absolutely. Okay. Thanks, Len. That's very, very good. Carlton, did you have something else? Okay, maybe not. All right.
I'm sorry. Do you use any visual beaconing?
Yeah, so one of this one that I have up on the screen actually did have an LED that we could see from the outside. It was not a very strong one, but it was perfect when you're going out in the middle of the night and finding this in a tree. We can see the actual blue lights or whatever it was that we had on this one. So we do that. It's mainly just to help, because we're going to get real close with the GPS coordinate. I did want to say, Lynn, the one thing I do is as I set my car up as a digipeater. I know it's against what Bob Bernenga says you should ever do as a mobile digipeater, but when it comes to this, it makes sense, because once I get close enough to where the balloon is, then I'll digipeat that beacon out, and then it'll be connected back in the network. So that's generally how we've solved the problem of finding it when it falls into a depression. Because the last place it falls to, it generally will fall out of the APRS network. Like I would say over 50% of the time that happens. But if my car's set up as a digipeater, then it'll beacon that last beacon, and as soon as I get close, everybody will see where it's at. Okay, John?
Yeah. I believe I sent you a video about what Cornell is doing with their balloon launches. And they are, in addition to using normal APRS, they're using LoRa protocols with mesh static, because they can get longer range with it. And my question is, do you guys work with any other colleges, or look at what other colleges do to try to get best practices? Or
no, so we started with whatever University of Colorado I think was doing, and that's where Diana came from, and so we started with what their best practices were first, and that was years and years ago. We haven't really done it enough recently, probably, to go there. I 100% agree, Laura. If I were to restart the entire project again, which it may happen, I don't know, the cadets can cram some stuff in the next few weeks, few months. We generally like to launch in April, so that's kind of our time frame. I'm a huge fan of LoRa. I've been playing with it. It's got a lot of quirks, but the distances and the power that you can get out of LoRa is truly phenomenal. So I definitely think that would be a great thing to add on to it.
thank you.
Okay, great. All right, so with that, I guess we have a little more time here. Let me where was I going to go with this? Oh, so this is the next thing. This is just an awful, like, Army. This is what we do with ConOps. So there's a land navigation, and just a quick history. I'm going to try to go through this pretty quickly. It's going to be a little bit intense with some of the stuff. Again, so I didn't put these. I put these slides together, but I pulled them from other briefs of people that I'd never probably met, but I understand what they were trying to do. The whole thing is, I got to West Point in 2017 on this is my second tour, I guess I should say. And I was told that basically, I want to say in 2012 or something like that, we lost a cadet due to getting lost in land nav, and he didn't make it. So obviously the Army doesn't want to lose soldiers in training. Nobody wants to lose that soldiers in training. So that was pretty significant event. And I know it happened when I was at Fort Hood as well. In general, land nav is difficult, but when you have like just thousands of cadets going through a year, like there's a potential for a terrible event like that. So what they decided to do was West Point created. I'm actually gonna move to this. They said, well, we need to figure a way to track all cadets, and just full stop. So what they ended up doing is, on the left-hand side here, you see this current system SMS. They tried to figure out, can you just use this satellite base, and had some commercial people. I don't know who they were, so I wasn't involved with how this worked. But they basically contracted out. It might have been Iridium or something like that. If anybody knows, they can chime in. But basically, they gave all the cadets trackers, and so over their period of time when they're out and doing their land nav, if they got lost, we'd be able to find them. So that was the initial thing that was created as kind of a knee-jerk, good old Army reaction of let's make sure we don't lose a cadet in the field again. So it turns out when I got here, I was told that this thing cost. They have to rent the system. and all of the devices and stuff, and it would cost about $700K. And I normally don't like to talk about money, but in this case, it was interesting because when I read this, I was like, well, if we put a D72 on every cadet, we could run an APRS system and not lose them, and it would cost a lot less than that. So I wrote to Bob Berninga and I said, hey, we're looking at using this for land nav. And the first thing he said is like, well, that's going to cost a lot. I'm like, well, you don't understand how much we're paying for this. So we bought on the right-hand side here, basically 500 D72s. And I'd like to talk about this to this group because everybody should be on the lookout. We are turning in about 450 of them. I'm keeping 50 here at the Ham Club. So I'm trying very hard to figure out where they're going to go. But this system is no longer like a system, but we created this to show that we could do it for less money. And it turns out you can see the right-hand side. It did better. So here's the I don't know. Again, I pulled these slides from where they're at. They basically said that the current system wasn't as good. Let's see if we can build another one. We recommended using the D72s. I wasn't involved with the actual building of the system. So some of this I'm going to show you is, it's all taken from other briefs of what we did, but you can see the D72As on the bottom right. They really, really like the fact that you could transmit on that and actually do voice. So like if you actually needed help, you could call for help. What our guys did is we did a typical engineering at West Point, and I wouldn't say we over-engineered, but the Dan Hawthorne, the guy who actually created this, or he actually started building this, really put a lot of effort in trying to figure out how to make this work perfectly. I know if somebody's probably going to say something about, because I got corrected on this when I was a lieutenant, that I tried to do past military traffic over ham radio. So we did get these, all of the radios were Mars modified. We didn't use APRS at FI. We didn't use 144.39. They were 143, 142. They were in the what do you call it? The Mars frequency for West Point. And so we coordinated all of that. And then the problem is you don't have APRS at FI. You don't have these servers. So what they ended up building, and this was Dan Hawthorne built this, was a Land Guardian system, which is basically its own standalone APRS network. I'm going to skip over a couple of things because I think you probably understand what's going on here. But they were trying to solve this problem. What we ended up with is doing some they did simulations first, and they basically said APRS would be better. Oh, there it is. So it is Iridium. We were proving that we could do better with APRS than we could with satellite coverage, which, you know, weather probably impacts the cadet more than it does VHF, but it definitely impacts GPS. You could see that. All right, yeah, so we have that. I did, okay, here. So we use D710s as the D710Gs actually as the base stations or as the digipeaters, and they had these weatherproof cases. We put them in. They built their own software. So I would love to. Anybody wants to do software stuff, we can sit down and figure out how they did this. But it was kind of cool. I think they used Leaflet, if I remember right. It's a JavaScript library for mapping. So we built our own mapping software and built the entire thing out, mounted these things up. You could see on the right one of the setups, so kind of where some of these temporary buildings are these little small buildings we have on some of the ranges where we put the antennas up, set that up. And then this is, I mean, at the end of the day, the commanders need to see what's right up at the top. How many people are out there? How many people are on course? How many people are off course? Anybody call an emergency? Who's stationary? Who's stale? What's watching? So they built literally software just to do this tracking of cadets. And I know Wynn's on here and he's written some APRS software. So one of the things that challenged them the most was actually zooming in and zooming out of maps and getting the icons to work correctly. That seemed to be one of the hardest problems that they had when they built this. But they built like a web-based system to be able to do this tracking. using the West Point maps and making it where we could look at it all in the talk. And in the picture on the bottom right, second from the left is the dean. That's General Jeb, and then Dan Hawthorne is talking to her on the right there. So yeah, we had the solar panels, the enclosure. So basically, solar digipeater. You could think of how you'd want to build that, and built that out. The only thing that I'm showing you this. I'm in the envy of it because I was just literally doing other things and I wasn't part of this team to do this, but they did some really, really good work. The only thing I did wrong, I think, was the shore power for the D710s. They didn't use a filtered power supply, but that's a problem that they just solved by not using. They just use battery for most things. And then they did their loss plot of trying to figure out how to make sure we had full coverage of the entire area to track cadets. So the good thing is, over 2 or 3 years of running this, they never lost a cadet. They did lose one D72. I was reading the report about that earlier today. A cadet just didn't have it tied properly and lost it, and it fell probably into the field or something. Who knows? So anyway, I know there's a quick overview. I didn't want to go to, I kind of wanted to hear if there's any comments on this. I would love to say that there's some GitHub channel. I would have to look to see if somebody wants some of the software, but I think that this is literally, if you were to think of how do you do APRS offline, like this is the system. This was literally built to do this as a totally enclosed. There's no internet required to track cadets in a very kind of centralized area. So with that, I'll turn it over and see if anybody has any questions.
Where are you sourcing the maps from?
Ooh, they liked it. We have our own military map source, I think, and that's probably what they use these because they have elevation. These are like the land nav maps they give cadets. I believe that and when it comes to the leaflet ones that were online, that probably was. Actually, I don't know. I would have to get back with you on that one. I'm not totally sure. That was my question too, because I know every time I play with any of our APRS stuff, the mapping is always kind of challenging because Google Maps is awesome, but it's not free per se. So
yeah, I know it can be challenging. I mean, there's a lot of tile sets that are freely available. They're not easy to find.
Yeah. Judging by this, I think they were using just our digital military maps. That's what these are, and this is what the land people see. So it's very comfortable. I have learned in my whole career in the Army is that if an infantry soldier likes a gun, likes a rifle, like you give them a rifle. Don't give them a Wi-Fi access point. So these maps really, really make sense to military people. So it's not to say I'm not military, but I just know that the infantry, we had this thing called the cyber rifle, which could shoot drones out of the sky, and nobody could understand if we did it with the Raspberry Pi. But as soon as we mounted an antenna on a rifle, everybody was like, "Oh, you're shooting the drone. Okay, we got it." So it's sometimes optics are important, but in this case, this is actually what the cadets see, so it actually makes a lot of sense to us. It's not as pretty as a Google map, but it's more useful because the contours are important. Some of the different icons and things like the impact area, that red impact area, clearly if we saw a cadet go there, that would not be a good day. You don't want cadets in your impact area for sure.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, Stephen, just curious. It's Andy. Where'd you put the receiver up on top of Bull Hill?
Yeah, so we had multiple digipeaters. There was one on Bull Hill. There's one, I can't remember. I don't know exactly, but all the hilltops, they basically covered those. But I do, at some point, Andy, in the future, I want to discuss with you. I am working with the Newburgh National Guard to move our repeater to Bull Hill. We have
oh, that's a good spot.
We have power up there. We have everything. So this is highly doable, which will change. It'll be our repeater kind of sucks now. It will be a major player if we can get that done.
It absolutely will. That's a beautiful spot. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm working with the New York Repeater Association. They required like a lot of data, and I'm still working on that. And of course, we kind of halted during the break, but or during the winter because it's just obviously problematic. So, but I went up there and surveyed it. You can see New York City from up there. It is beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. So, I think we'll be that's going to be important if we can.
Going to be on that tower up there?
Yeah, we can put it on the tower. Yeah.
Oh. Wow. Okay. I'm excited for you.
Yeah. Again, I can't say. I'm going to say within a year, it's a doable project. Possibly in the fall of this year, we could probably have it done. I got to do some coordination on. Well, there's bureaucracy on West Point, but
No,
I
really?
think,
The government?
yeah. I'm cutting through that. I'm not worried about that, but as much. The good thing is these National Guard guys know what they're doing, and they really, really want to help us do this. So, and they've done some great work of just making our repeater better already. But they're really excited about doing it. So, and I may, if I can get my, if everything works right, I could probably put an iGate up there as well because there's actually network access there now. So it'll be really.
Let me know how things go.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. John?
Yes, sir. I assume you're aware of the Android Team Awareness Kit, the ATAC?
Yes.
Are you guys, if you were doing this exercise today, would the cadets have that? I mean, that lets you know where everybody is, right?
It does. I have not. I'm kind of one part removed from what the cadets are doing, and so there's basically an Army program that's actually supporting this now. So they have a cell tower system and they have like cell base stations that they put out. But it makes sense that it should be ATAC. I'm a huge ATAC fan, actually. Like I have an ATAC server I've built. Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's CivTAC, there's APRS ATAC. There's all kinds of cool stuff going on with ATAC. I'm a big fan of it. I've used it multiple times. We haven't used it for this. But yeah, no, it's a great question. Actually, I might actually have to go ask what they're doing now.
What is the acronym you're saying? ATAC?
Yeah, if you Google ATAK, it's Android Team Awareness Kit or Tactical Assault Kit, depending on who you talk to.
Oh, that's a good thing, Steve.
Yeah, tak.gov, I think is what it is. The government version and the civilian CivTAC, I think, is CIVTAK. It's super good. It's really really cool stuff. They built a lot of plugins. You can interface with it. That's one of my the list of things to do is try to get more involved with that. I think you could probably do LoRa stuff and feed it into there. I have all these ideas of what I want to do with TAC, but TAC is definitely if we were to redo this today, I would 100% go with TAC. Not a chance. Dan Hawthorne's just a super hard charging captain who decided to just build everything from scratch because he's that good. But he's down at Fort, now it's called Fort Eisenhower. So anyway, yeah, Andrew.
We just had two questions. One was, what was the equipment the cadets had on them? And I guess another question was, did you consider maybe Jackie Jones for digipeters in your location?
Okay.
There's an iGate on Jackie.
I don't know what Jackie Jones is, but we did. Every cadet had a D72, so we had 500 D72s. Generally, about 100 or so. I can't say exactly right. No more than 100 cadets would be out on the course at a time. So we had one D72 per cadet, I think, or if they were in teams, then there would be one per team. And yeah, and it works. There was never anybody that was too far off.
Thank you.
Steve?
Hey, awesome presentation. And again, sorry that I joined a little late. My question, I'll have to be careful how I ask it. I'll just say drones and APRS. Anything interesting that you can talk about that's being done? Because I'm playing around with that legally because I have an FAA 107 license now. But anything there for some of the situational awareness, blending the two technologies together to get better comms range?
No, no. I'd like to talk to you about that later. But yeah, no, that's really cool. I mean, it makes sense. Line of sight is line of sight, and in this region, a
It's a
drone.
challenge.
A drone can give you that advantage of line of sight. So 100%, definitely something that would be very fascinating, especially if you can get a small digipeater, even if it's low power. It would be super advantageous if you're in a mountainous area. There you go. Whatever you got there, I can't see it, but it looks cool.
Yeah, it's a SB32 LoRa board with the GPS in it and a battery. Well, I don't have the battery in it for this, but attach something like that to a drone and it'll digipeat and do store and forward. That's a solid package.
Super cool. Okay. If there's no more questions, I do have one more thing that I would like to just kind of go over. I've gone over this before, but I just feel like, I don't know. This is pulled from a presentation I gave to HamSci, but I just like the imagery of it and just a better understanding of NVIS. So we're switching gears here. If everybody's okay with it, I want to switch gears from VHF to HF here. So
Go for it.
We good, Jeff? Okay, so real quick, I know we have, what is it, 9? So we have a few minutes. We were trying to figure out, what happens. This is when I first got to ACI in 2018 or so, trying to figure out what happens in a being a cyber person, the chance of getting your satellite jammed is now no longer 0%. Like in the Middle East it was, but in a more sophisticated adversary, that possibility, as we're seeing it with Ukraine and Russia, is a thing. So we were saying, okay, what did we do if this goes downhill? And so right here is a buddy pole with extended ends on it that we had to do mainly because we were trying to go to around 5 megahertz Mars frequency. So we had to make our own modified buddy pole antenna. Still not a fan of the buddy pole, but I can tell you that it did work in this scenario. We did some JS8, which is what you see here. Back when JS8 first came out, used an Elecraft radio. So non-Army equipment. It was just for ACI, it was a cool thing, this opportunity to just buy ham radio equipment and use it for testing for work. Kind of the coolest thing that you can do if you're a ham radio operator. So we were able to basically show that we could do a NVIS link across Teafort Mountain. And Teafort Mountain's a National Training Center in California. And basically, we pulled up our VHF radios and said, okay, can we talk through this mountain? We could not talk through the mountain. So we proved that the line of sight was broken. And then we put these radios on each side. So what we started out with was just 100 watts voice. We were able to talk across it. We had a direction finding system called the Watchdog, which actually is one of two systems. It used to be one of one system. Now there's two systems from what I understand, but the only one that I've ever used that gives you not only direction of arrival, but elevation of arrival. So it's a direction finding system that does that. And the key to it is that elevation of arrival helps us understand if we're actually getting a true NVIS or if it's some kind of weird, I don't know, knife edge diffraction or something strange going on there. So we were getting about 87 degrees, so 85 to 87 degrees on the direction finding. So we were talking NVIS with our kind of sloped dipole. You saw what the antenna looks like. And here were the two spots. So we had one, Teafort Mountain's in the middle there, about 20 kilometers across. We had two different positions. I think I was at transceiver 1. Transceiver 2, position 1, and transceiver 2, position 2 was our mobile team. That was my other guys that were out there. And we were able to talk at 100 watts. We were able to talk at 50 watts. Then when we went to about 25 watts is when voice became intelligible but not readable. So we were in the kind of fuzzy range. Then we said, well, we'll just switch to digital. So we switched to JS8 so we could send Specifically, we want to actually send messages, and JS8 allows you to do that. So we went to 10 watts, then 5 watts, then 1 watt, and then it turns out the Elecraft only goes down to 100 milliwatts. So we finally got down to 100 milliwatts, and it was copying 100%. And that part blew my mind, because I'm thinking, if it's 50 watts to talk voice, but we can go 100 milliwatts to talk data, which was obviously every 15 seconds. If you've done FT8, you know the drill. It's every 15 seconds, but and you can see it. But at 100 milliwatts, our direction finder couldn't pick it out anymore, which was very curious to us, because that's useful. So I took Google Earth. I love playing with Google Earth, and this is the path that it takes. So a virtualized way of looking at it. I calculated where the ionosphere was. But basically, for us to talk across 20 kilometers, we had to go like 200 kilometers up to space, basically, to the ionosphere and back down. So I just love to show this, because I think people don't always fully appreciate NVIS and how it works. And I say that, and you have a ham radio audience. And, you know, I was talking to somebody about maybe it was about a year ago, and he was down in and Steve knows this area, and Andy knows this area here. He was down in like Peekskill. There's no way I can talk ground wave to Peekskill. It's just not possible. There's too many mountains in the way. And he's like, I was like, we're probably doing a NVIS, and he just didn't believe me. And I was like, no, like, I mean, I kind of know how this works, and they're doing a NVIS shot. He's like, no, you're not that far. You must be ground wave. I'm like, looking on the map. I'm like, no, there's no way that we're ground wave. And then as he's talking to me, I could hear the fade. And I'm like, no, the fade only happens. It doesn't happen on ground wave. I mean, it could. It's not impossible. But you hear that little bit of a fade as the ionosphere. And so it was funny, just because even our ham community doesn't realize what we do. We bounce off the ionosphere a lot on HF. You know, if the frequency's in the right range, and I asked him what antenna he has, he didn't have a vertical. If he had a vertical, I would have been very confused. But he had a straight up dipole, and I had my inverted V. So nope, ground NVIS works, and it's really cool when it works. And it's, the Army loves this stuff. Like, we need to figure out how to make this work even better. John.
Yeah, I'd like to share some data with you at some point about my analysis of the QSO party in Virginia's data, because almost everything at 40 and 80 at least is NVIS, and you can learn a lot about what works, what doesn't when it fades out. It's pretty interesting. Yeah. Cool, very cool, man.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I just don't think that we all understand it. And again, I would say I was super, super skeptical when we did this at NTC, because I've always heard about these things. But when you have a direction finder that can tell you your angle of arrival is 87 degrees, then I don't know how else to convince anyone beyond that, because that's just the way that thing was detecting the signal coming in. So I mean, that's as real as I can get in my head. So this is actually our watchdog system, the direction finding system. It's 4 cross dipoles, so 16 wires. And then it goes to a solar system. This is it set up out at NTC, which was this is their VHF direction finding system, but this one's the HF one that we had that was out there, which is really, really fun to operate. So, there we go. So I'm done with my slides there.